The impossible escape from the Gulag, 2,000 kilometers through the taiga for freedom. Degrees. In that kind of cold, metal snaps like glass. Your breath turns to ice needles in the air. Without shelter, you've got maybe 15 minutes before you're done for. And it was in this cold, in the dead of the Kolyma winter of 1949, that a young woman decided to do something even the most desperate prisoners called madness. She escaped from a camp they dubbed the Pole of Cold and Despair. 2 months trudging through a white wasteland where every step could be your last. Behind her, guards with rifles and dogs. Ahead, 2,000 kilometers of frozen taiga. Her name was Varvara Baranova. For years, her name was only whispered in the Kolyma barracks. Her story became a legend, one so wild, even those who'd seen the impossible didn't quite believe it. A frail 32-year-old woman weighing less than 40 kilos after years on camp rations did what strong men couldn't. She walked from Magadan to Yakutsk in the harshest time of year, when even locals wouldn't dare step outside. Back in the 50s, when rumors of her escape first trickled into the camps, the bosses clamped down hard. No one was allowed to talk about it. Her story was too dangerous, too inspiring. If she could do it, others might try, and that was something the system couldn't allow. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment an ordinary Soviet schoolteacher became prisoner 456, and then the woman who defied an entire system. Varvara was born in 1917 in a small town near Smolensk. Her dad worked the railways, her mom kept the house, your typical family, one of millions. As a kid, Varya, as her loved ones called her, had the stubborn streak that set her apart. Neighbors used to say once she made up her mind, good luck changing it. One winter when she was just 8, she sat on the porch in the freezing cold for 3 hours because she'd bet her brother she wouldn't go inside first. He gave up when his fingers started going numb. Varya, she stayed put. Her mom brought out boots and a coat but couldn't talk her into coming in. That's who she was, even back then. In 1937, Varvara graduated from a pedagogical institute in Moscow. She got assigned to a school in Magadan. People were shocked. A young, beautiful, educated woman could have stayed in the capital. But Varya dreamed of something bigger, bringing knowledge to the farthest corners of the country. She believed in the ideals they taught her, believed education could change the world. In Magadan, she met Nikolai Baranov, a young engineer building a new port. They fell in love, married within 6 months, and had a daughter, Katia. To everyone, they were the perfect couple, young, full of energy, ready to work for the motherland. Life seemed perfect. Then came 1946. During a parent-teacher meeting, Varvara dared to question the district's methods for handling troubled teens. She said just a few words about how physical punishment damages kids, how fear isn't the best teacher. A week later, the first denunciation came, then a second, a third. Her words were twisted into criticism of Soviet pedagogy and by extension the whole system. They arrested her in the middle of a lesson. The kids later said she calmly put down her chalk, turned to the class and said, "Remember, 2 + 2 will always be 4, no matter what anyone tells you." Those were her last words to her students. The investigation dragged on for 4 months. Nikolai tried everything, begging for visits, sending parcels, writing letters to higher-ups. Nothing worked. Her trial lasted 15 minutes. 10 years in the camps for anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda. A month later, they arrested Nikolai as a family member of an enemy of the people. Their 3-year-old daughter, Katia, was sent to an orphanage. That's how Varvara Baranova, the teacher, became prisoner 456. The journey to Kolyma was a nightmare that never ended. They packed over 100 women into a cattle car meant for 40. Many didn't make it. Those who did arrived in a hell that made prison look like a spa. Kolyma wasn't just a camp, it was a death factory, grinding human lives into gold and uranium. People in other camps, when they heard someone was being sent to Kolyma, looked at them like they were already dead. Goodbyes were final. Almost no one came back. Varvara ended up at a women's camp 70 kilometers from Magadan, officially called OLP-7, but the prisoners just called it the Valley. The Valley of Death, to be exact. The barracks sat in a hollow between hills where the coldest air settled. Temperatures dropped 10-15 degrees lower than the official readings, which were already brutal. Varvara's barrack housed 80 women. 3-tiered bunks, no mattresses, just boards. Those who didn't fit slept on the floor. The stove was lit twice a day, but the heat lasted maybe an hour. Women slept in their clothes, huddled together for warmth. Those on the edges often didn't wake up, frozen solid. They were carried out and stacked behind the barrack like firewood. No one had time to bury them. Reveille was at 5 a.m. Rain, snow, or blizzard, they were herded out for roll call. They'd stand for an hour, sometimes 2, while the bosses decided who'd go where. Women worked alongside men, logging, gold mining, road building. The quotas were set for healthy men, but no one got a break. Fail to meet the quota and your ration was cut. Less food meant less strength to work. A vicious cycle with only one way out. Varvara was assigned to a logging brigade. Her partner was Maria Stepanovna, a former Moscow theater actress about 50 who somehow clung to a shred of dignity even in that place. She taught Varvara the golden rule of survival. Sweetheart, you have to die inside to survive out here. Stop feeling, stop remembering, stop hopping. Become a function, that's the only way to make it. But Varvara couldn't become a function. Every night she dreamed of her daughter, little Katya, reaching out, calling for her mama. She'd wake up with tears freezing on her cheeks. Maria would silently wipe them away with her sleeve and whisper, "Don't cry in front of them, they feed on our tears." They got one meal a day, 300 grams of bread and a watery soup of rotten cabbage and frozen potatoes. Fish heads were a rare treat. Women fought like animals over them. At first Varvara refused to join the scrambles, but hunger breaks all principles. Within a month she was shoving others aside to reach the pot first. Water was another nightmare. In winter they melted snow, but there was rarely enough fuel. Eating snow raw gave you stomach cramps or dysentery. Dysentery in that cold was a death sentence. Varvara saw women freeze in their own filth, too weak to make it back to the barrack. The breaking point came in November 1948. Word spread through the camp about a new wave of sentences. 10 years could turn into 25 with a single decision, no trial, no appeal. That night, Maria Stepanovna hanged herself with her own scarf. Varvara found her in the morning, clutching a worn-out photo of her son, a boy about 10 in a sailor suit. That's when Varvara knew if she stayed, she wouldn't survive her sentence. And if she did, she'd come out a husk like the few who made it to release, empty shells, unable to live normally again. The idea of escape seemed insane at first. Nobody escaped Kolyma. It was a fact. Where would you go? Thousands of kilometers of taiga, frost, wild animals. The nearest free settlement was 2,000 kilometers away. No documents, no food, no warm clothes, and snitches everywhere in every village, every hamlet. If you got caught, it was execution. If you were lucky, a quick one. But Varvara started planning. Slowly, carefully, secretly. First, she needed to gain weight. She traded her last pair of warm socks for a piece of lard, a hidden gold earring for a loaf of bread. She ate at night tiny bites so no one would see. Then she studied the terrain. On logging shifts, she memorized paths, wind directions, the locations of streams. She eavesdropped on guards talking about the weather, about when blizzards were coming. A blizzard was the best time to escape. Snow covers tracks, throws dogs off the scent. She needed a partner. You couldn't do it alone. Varvara watched the other women, looking for someone she could trust. She chose Anna Kornilova, a young peasant woman from Vologda, jailed for hiding a sack of grain to feed her 5 kids. Anna was strong, resilient, and desperate. When Varvara hinted at escape, Anna didn't hesitate. Better to die free in the taiga than a slave here. They prepared together, hoarding dried bread crusts, hiding them in the linings of their jackets. Anna traded with the camp's criminals for a broken compass. Its needle still worked. Varvara got bandages and iodine from the camp nurse in exchange for writing a letter home for her. The nurse was illiterate. The hardest part was warm clothing. The camp issued thin jackets that barely kept you alive for an hour in the cold. They needed real furs, boots, mittens. Luck struck in December when a new group of prisoners arrived. Among them was the wife of a high-ranking official caught in a purge with a trunk full of belongings the guards hadn't looted. She died of pneumonia 3 days later. Varvara and Anna were first to her bunk, finding a fur vest and a pair of boots hidden under the mattress. They stashed them under the barrack floor. Their plan was simple and insane: wait for a big blizzard and slip out during evening roll call. In a storm, visibility drops to a few meters and guards don't stray far from their towers. If they got lucky, the escape wouldn't be noticed until morning. By then, they could be 30-40 kilometers away, lost in the taiga. But things didn't go as planned. The blizzard hit on the night of December 18. Varvara woke to the howl of the wind and knew it was now or never. She nudged Anna, who opened her eyes and understood instantly. They'd been preparing for 2 months, every detail planned, but now, as the moment arrived, both were shaking with fear. At 4 a.m., an hour before reveille, they started dressing. Fur vests under their camp jackets, double foot-wraps, boots. They wrapped their bread and matches in rags, hid them under their clothes. Anna had sewn the compass into her mitten. Varvara carried her only treasure, a pencil stub and a scrap of paper. If they were caught, she wanted to leave a few words for Katya. The plan was to lag behind during morning roll call, hide in the latrine and crawl through a loose board to the cesspit. From there they'd slip out of the camp and sprint to the forest. The blizzard would hide them. But they hadn't counted on one thing: a new camp commander, Captain Kramov, arrived that night. Rumor was he could smell an escape a week before a prisoner even thought of it. His first act was to change the morning roll call. Instead of a general lineup, he ordered barracks checked one by one. When a guard burst into their barrack half an hour early, Varvara knew their plan was dead. Anna tried to ditch her boots, but it was too late. The guard spotted them. A shout ripped through the morning, "Escape! They're planning an escape." What happened next was a blur for Varvara. They were dragged to the parade ground, stripped to their underclothes in the freezing cold. Kramov personally searched them, finding everything: the bread, the matches, the compass. He held up the pencil stub like it was poison. "What were you going to write, traitor? Pamphlets?" he sneered. Anna was taken first. Varvara never saw her again. Word later spread through the camp's grapevine that Anna was shot that night for attempted armed escape. Armed because they planted a shiv on her during the search. Varvara's punishment was different. The punishment cell, a stone box 2 by 2 meters, no windows, no heat. The floor was flooded, turning to ice by evening. They fed her once every 3 days, a scrap of bread and a cup of water. Sleep was only possible standing, leaning against the wall. Sit down and you'd freeze to the ice. She lasted 10 days. On the 11th they carried her out unconscious. The camp nurse said another hour would have been the end. Frostbite, pneumonia, total exhaustion. But Varvara survived. Maybe her body was tougher than it looked, or maybe the thought of Katia kept her going. She spent 2 months in what passed for a hospital, a barrack with 20 beds for 100 patients. No medicine, barely any food. Survival was a matter of willpower. Varvara forced herself to get up every morning, take a few steps, then more. By the end of a month she could walk the length of the barrack and back. It was there she met someone who changed everything. Semyon Kuzmich Portnov, a former Arctic pilot, a hero whose face was in newspapers in the 30s. Now he was a wreck, his toes amputated from frostbite, jailed for sabotage after a test flight crash killed his co-pilot. He lay on the next cot, delirious, muttering about secret routes, smugglers' paths, hunters' cabins. Varvara listened, memorizing every word. When he came to, she cared for him, shared her ration, changed his bandages. He was touched. Kindness was rare in the camps. "Why are you helping me, girl?" he asked. She didn't lie. "I want out, no matter what it takes." Semyon looked at her for a long time, then said, "Nobody leaves Kolyma. Kolyma only lets the dead go, but fine, I'll be the first to leave alive." That was it. He started teaching her, whispering at night while others slept. How to navigate by the stars. Polaris is always north, even without a compass. How to read animal tracks. Where a moose can go, a person can follow. How to find winter cabins always built near water, doors facing south. How to survive, make fire without matches, build a snow shelter, eat certain barks when food runs out. Most importantly, he told her about a secret trail. An old gold prospector's route from before the revolution. It avoided main roads, winding through passes and ravines. The local evenks called it the Path of Spirits and steered clear. For an escapee it was the only shot. "Head through the northern hill," he whispered, sketching a map on his blanket with his finger. "There's an old mine shaft abandoned for a decade. Guards don't go there, say it's cursed. Don't turn left in the shaft. Walk 300 meters, you'll come out by a stream. Follow it uphill to the first ravine." Semyon died quietly in his sleep in February 1949. Varvara closed his eyes and whispered, "I'll make it, I promise." That night she decided there'd be a second escape, this time alone. It took another month to prepare. She was discharged from the hospital and put on light work mending fishing nets. It was a stroke of luck. Indoors near a stove, she could dry bread crusts, hide them in the nets. The brigade leader, an old criminal named Matryona, was lenient with political prisoners. She saw Varvara hiding bread but didn't snitch, just said, "Don't get caught or I'll catch hell too." Warm clothes were harder. After her first escape attempt, Varvara was under extra scrutiny, but luck struck again. In early March a fire broke out in the women's barrack. Someone mishandled a candle. In the chaos, as everyone scrambled to save their things, Varvara grabbed a stranger's fur coat and boots, hiding them in a snowdrift behind the latrine. The moment came on March 7, 1949. The camp was buzzing. A commission from Magadan was visiting, a big deal. Guards were distracted, preparing for the higher-ups. Best of all, a massive blizzard was forecast. Old-timers said Yakutsk shamans could feel storms coming, and sure enough, by evening the sky turned leaden, the air thick. Varvara knew this was her last chance. She left the barrack at 10 p.m., supposedly for the latrine. In reality, she stepped into eternity or death. It didn't matter anymore. She remembered those first steps outside the camp with crystal clarity. The snow crunched so loudly under her boots she thought the whole camp would wake up. But the blizzard was starting. Wind whipped snow into spirals, cutting visibility to 5 meters in 15 minutes, then 2 meters in half an hour. The mine shaft was where Semyon said it would be, a boarded-up entrance. Varvara squeezed inside. The darkness was total. She felt her way along the wall, counting steps, terrified of losing track. 298, 299, 300. The exit. The stream was there too, iced over but visible by the dip in the snow. That first night she walked without stopping. Fear drove her harder than any whip. Every snapping twig sounded like a gunshot, every shadow a pursuer. By morning she'd covered maybe 20 kilometers, maybe more. Distances are tricky in a blizzard. She found a fallen spruce with upturned roots, a natural shelter. She crawled underneath, ate a handful of crusts, chewed snow. Sleep was out of the question, you'd freeze, but exhaustion won and she dozed off. She woke to silence. The blizzard had stopped. That was bad. Her tracks were now clear as day. She had to move, find a stream or river to throw off the dogs. But first she climbed out and looked around. As far as she could see, there was nothing but white silence. The taiga blanketed in snow. No sound, no movement, just her breath turning to vapor. That's when it hit her, the sheer scale of what she'd taken on. 2,000 kilometers of this emptiness alone, with no map, almost no food, in 40 below cold. It's hard for us to imagine. We're used to help being a phone call away, rescue teams people. Out there it was just her and the endless white void. By the third day, hallucinations started. At first it was subtle. She thought someone was following her. She turned, but no one was there. Then it got worse. She saw Katia, her daughter, running through the snow in a summer dress. She'd scream, chase her, and collapse into a snowbank, clutching nothing. She knew it was a mirage but couldn't stop it. Her food ran out on the 5th day. From then on it was tree bark, pine needles, buds, things Semyon taught her. Aspen bark was bitter but nourishing. Pine buds had vitamins, but try chewing frozen bark when your teeth wobble from scurvy and your stomach cramping from hunger. Varvara choked it down, forced herself to swallow. Survival isn't heroic, it's stubborn, dogged refusal to give up. On the 7th day she stumbled on an old hunter's cabin. A miracle maybe, but the taiga is dotted with these shelters if you know where to look. Semyon had said, check near water on south-facing slopes where the forest thins. The cabin was half collapsed, the roof caved in but the stove worked, and there was a stash old, maybe 5 years untouched, but a stash. A tin of salt, a small sack of flour, even matches in a metal box. Varvara lit a fire, her first in a week. The warmth was so overwhelming, she cried. Tears stung her wind-burned cheeks, dripping onto her hands. She looked at them and barely recognized them, swollen, black from frostbite, skin peeling, the hands of an old woman. She was 32. The camp didn't notice her escape until morning. The barrack supervisor found her bunk empty and sounded the alarm. Captain Kramov was livid. A second escape in 3 months was a stain on his record. He ordered a full sweep. They found her tracks near the mine shaft, but the blizzard had erased the rest. A manhunt was launched, 3 groups, 5 men each with dogs and local trackers. People later said Kramov led one group himself with the best dogs and trackers, promising a bonus to whoever caught her, dead or alive. You've got to understand the mindset back then. Catching an escapee wasn't just a job, it was the system's honor. If one person got away, others might try. The Gulag ran on fear, the fear of inevitable punishment. A single crack in that fear could bring it all down. The dogs picked up her trail on the 3rd day. Kramov's group followed, finding her campsites, blood on the snow she'd cut herself, scraps of cloth on branches, a spot where she'd lit a fire. Kramov gloated, she's weak, she won't last another day or two. But Varvara didn't die, she learned from the taiga. She walked stream beds and rocky slopes where wind swept snow away, masking her tracks. She hid her camps, lit fires only at night in hollows to hide the smoke. She sensed the pursuit. When you're cornered, your instincts sharpen. The closest call came on the 10th day. Varvara stopped at a frozen lake, debating whether to skirt the shore or cross the ice. The shore meant an extra 10 kilometers and her strength was fatting. The ice was faster but exposed, no cover. She risked it. Halfway across she heard barking. Close, she turned. 5 figures and 2 dogs appeared on the shore. They saw her. Shouts, whistles, she ran. Where? There was nowhere to go, just a kilometer of open ice. Stopping meant surrender, and surrender wasn't in her. A shot rang out, the bullet whistling overhead, a warning. A second shot cracked the ice a meter away. They weren't aiming to kill, they wanted her alive. She reached the far shore, dove into the forest, and kept running, zigzagging through trees, tearing through brush, falling, getting up. Then a cliff 15 meters down to an unfrozen river, probably fed by warm springs. The voices were closing in. She didn't think, she jumped. Cold water is its own kind of hell. Your body seizes, lungs refuse to breathe. But she swam, clawed her way to the other bank. Her clothes froze instantly, turning to an icy shell. She couldn't stop, stopping was death. She ran, crunching through the ice crust. The pursuers fell back, unwilling to jump, looking for a way around. That gave her a 3 or 4 hour head start. She needed shelter, fire, or she'd die of hypothermia. She found an empty bear den, crawled inside, and blocked the entrance with branches. Her body heat in that confined space saved her. By morning, the pursuit had veered off. Maybe they thought she'd drowned, maybe the dogs lost her scent. She didn't care, she slipped away again. But her strength was gone. No food, over 1,000 kilometers still to go. By the 15th day she stopped counting kilometers and started counting steps. 100 steps, rest, another 100. Her body moved on autopilot, her mind fading in and out. Then she saw smoke rising above the taiga, salvation or death. A hunter's cabin or a guard post. Her brain was sluggish, but she had no choice. One more night in the open and she was finished. She crawled toward the smoke. It was an Evink encampment, 3 tents, dogs, reindeer. A boy, maybe 10, spotted her first and shouted, Adults ran out, an old man in a reindeer parka, two women, a young man with a rifle. They stared at her like she was a ghost. No wonder, a frostbitten figure in icy rags crawling through the snow. The old man barked something at the young one, who lowered his gun. The women rushed to Varvara, lifted her, and dragged her to a tent. Inside, it was warm, impossibly, unbelievably warm. The women didn't fuss to them, she was a freezing creature who needed help. They wrapped her in reindeer hides, fed her hot broth. Varvara cried as she sipped at the first hot food in 2 weeks. The old man sat across from her, watching, then said in broken Russian, "You ran. From the dead house you ran." It wasn't a question, she nodded. No point denying it, her appearance said it all. He paused, then added, "Russian bosses came here 3 days ago looking for a woman." Varvara froze. 3 days ago meant the hunt was still on. They didn't believe she was dead. She tried to stand, she couldn't endanger these people, but the old man stopped her with a gesture. "Sit, we don't talk to Russian bosses, we have our own laws, you're a guest in our tent, we don't betray guests." This is important to understand. The Evenks, the native people of that land, had a tense relationship with Soviet authorities. They were citizens in name but lived by their own ancient laws. One of those was hospitality. Breaking it meant angering the spirits. Varvara stayed with them for 4 days. They treated her like family. A young woman named Ina rubbed her frostbitten limbs with a foul-smelling salve made from bear fat and herbs. It worked, her blackened fingers started to pink up, feeling returning. The old man Nikolai, a Russian name from Soviet school, his real one was unpronounceable, taught her about the taiga animal habits, surviving blizzards. "You walked wrong," he said, eyeing her frostbitten feet. "Stick to river ice, it's flat, easier, and wind hides your tracks. You went through the forest, wasted strength." From him she learned grim news. The pursuit wasn't just for her. Her escape had inspired 3 others to try. 2 were caught the first day. The third, a young man, made it almost to the Evenk camp. Nikolai found him a kilometer away, frozen dead. "Want to see?" he asked. Varvara nodded. They led her to a snow-covered mound, dug it out. A boy, maybe 20, blonde, delicate features. In his pocket a note, "Mama, forgive me, I tried." Varvara stood over him, thinking, that could have been me, that should have been me. On the 5th day Nikolai said, "You must go, Russians will come again if they find you trouble for us." They gave her new clothes, a reindeer parka, boots, mittens, food, dried meat, flatbreads, a chunk of lard, most importantly a guide. Nikolai's youngest son, Vanya, another Russian name, would lead her 100 kilometers to an old trading post. "No Russians there," Nikolai said. "Just old Mikhail, he helps runaways, you're not the first." The goodbye was brief. Ina hugged her, slipping a wolf-tooth amulet into her pocket. "For strength," she said. Nikolai just nodded. Varvara never saw them again. Years later she heard their entire camp was wiped out, officially an epidemic, unofficially retribution for aiding escapees. Vanya guided her for 3 days, silent, communicating in gestures. He didn't speak Russian. They traveled at night, hiding in snow caves he dug, in 15 minutes lining them with branches for warmth. On the 3rd night he brought her to a crumbling cabin by a frozen river, gestured, "Go on alone," and vanished into the dark. Varvara pushed open the door. It smelled of mold and something human. She froze. A raspy voice came from the darkness. "Come in, don't stand there letting the cold in." She lit a match. The Evenks had given her a box. In the corner on a bunk sat an old man, ancient as the taiga itself, with a waist-long beard and sharp, faded eyes. This was Mikhail. "From the camp?" he asked. She nodded. "What number this year? 5th, 6th, I've lost count." He got up, started a fire in the stove. "Sit, warm up, talk when you're ready." Mikhail was a former Tsarist exile, sent to Siberia in 1907 for revolutionary activities. After the revolution he stayed, rooted to the taiga, living off hunting, fishing, and trading with the Evenks. Since the 30s he'd been helping escapees, not out of ideology but humanity. "I've seen the convoys to Kolyma," he said. "Thousands of people, half don't make it. Those who run are either brave or crazy, but everyone deserves a shot." He had a system. He knew every fugitive within 300 kilometers, knew the guard posts, the safe routes, the guides who'd help for a price or pity. Most importantly, he had documents, passports, certificates, IDs, all blank but real. "Fill it out yourself, be whoever you want," he said, pulling a stack from a hidden compartment. "Partisans got these, they've got their own scores to settle." Varvara couldn't believe it, a new identity, a new life, a chance to vanish. Mikhail handed her a passport. "Pick a name, nothing fancy, simple, Russian, and a simple story. Evacuee, lost your papers in a bombing, there's thousands like that." She became Anna Sergeyevna Petrova, 30, from Voronezh. Husband died in the war, no kids. Mikhail filled out the papers in elegant, old-school handwriting, adding official stamps. She didn't ask where they came from. She stayed with him 3 days, eating, sleeping, coming back to life. On the 4th he said, "Time to go, ice breakups coming, rivers will be impassable, Yakutsk 700 kilometers, stick to the riverbank, not the ice, slower but safer." He gave her a hand-drawn map detailed marking safe stops and friendly contacts. He gave her an address in Yakutsk. Maria Ivanovna, say it's from Mikhail, she'll help. Their goodbye was heartfelt. He hugged her like a daughter. Go with God, if they catch you, you don't know me, got it? She nodded. They both knew if she was caught, he'd face a firing squad. At his age, there'd be no trial. The rest of the journey felt strange. After the hell of those first 2 weeks where every day could have been her last, things seemed almost easier. Still cold, still hungry, still terrifying, but she had a goal, a route, documents, and most importantly, hope. But the taiga doesn't forgive overconfidence. On the 25th day, with less than 300 kilometers to Yakutsk, disaster struck. She was walking along a riverbank when the ice, weakened by warm springs and hidden by snow, gave way. She plunged in up to her waist. The cold was paralyzing, her muscles locking up. She tried to climb out, but the ice kept breaking under her hands. Panic, real animal panic, hit her for the first time. She was going to die in that black water and no one would know. Katia would think her mother abandoned her. That thought gave her strength. She screamed, clawed at the ice, and somehow dragged herself out. She woke up on the bank, her clothes a frozen shell. She needed fire or she'd be dead in 15 minutes. Her matches were soaked, but Semyon's words echoed. There's always one dry spot deep in a pocket. Her hands shook, barely obeying. First match, nothing. Second wind snuffed it. Third flame. The fire saved her life. She sat wrapped in her half-dry parka watching her clothes dry. If guards came now, she wouldn't even run. She had nothing left, but no one came. Instead, a fox appeared, skinny, mangy, with a scruffy tail. It sat across the fire, staring. Varvara tossed it a piece of dried meat. It grabbed it and ran. An hour later it came back, sat in the same spot. They stayed like that all night, two outcasts warming by the same flame. By morning her clothes were dry. She put out the fire. The fox watched. Thanks for the company, Varvara said. The fox tilted its head as if it understood, then trotted off. They never met again, but that absurd moment of connection with a wild animal stayed with her forever. Yakutsk was 200 kilometers away, a few days' trek. It felt so close, but those final kilometers nearly broke her. The snow was melting, turning the taiga into a swamp. Each step sank into a slurry of snow, water, and leaves. She managed 15 kilometers a day tops, but the real danger was people. The closer she got to Yakutsk, the more she saw loggers, hunters, geological teams, and among them the NKVD's eyes and ears. One wrong look, one careless word, and it was over. Mikhail's documents were good, but would they hold up under scrutiny? On the third day after the ice incident, she heard sleigh runners. A dog sled approached. No time to hide, the forest was sparse. She decided to face it. Running would look suspicious. Two men, a Yakut in traditional clothes and a Russian in a uniform, not in KVD, maybe a forester, but who knew? They stopped. The Russian hopped off, came closer. Papers, he said, holding out his hand. Varvara handed over the passport, amazed her hands didn't shake, though her heart was pounding loud enough for him to hear. He studied the document, compared the photo to her face. The photo wasn't hers. Mikhail had said all Russian women looked the same in photos as long as the age was close. Where you coming from? He asked. Teply Klyach, to my sister in Yakutsk. She's sick, needs help. He grunted, walking through the taiga alone, no money for transport. Varvara looked down. She's all I have left after the war. The Yakut said something in his language. The Russian nodded, handed back the papers. Be careful, runaways from the camps are around. Varvara feigned fear. Runaways? Lord, I thought the taiga was safe. Never safe, miss, he said. Stick to the road, don't walk at night. They left. She stood frozen for 5 minutes, knees trembling. First test passed, but how many more? On the 5th day she reached a logging settlement. Detouring would add a day, so she risked going through. It was quiet, just barking dogs. She walked the main street, trying to look confident. A woman with buckets stared curiously but said nothing. A drunken man shouted something incoherent from a doorway. Varvara walked faster. At the edge of the village, a young man in a jacket, no hat, called out, "Hey lady, where you from?" She repeated her story about the sick sister. He nodded. Yakutsk's 3 or 4 days away. Want a ride? Truck going tomorrow. The temptation was huge, hours instead of days, but transport meant checks, questions, risk. Thanks kid, but I'll walk, used to it. He shrugged. Suit yourself, but watch out for wolves at night. He left. She exhaled. Another hurdle cleared. That night she heard wolves, distant at first, then closer. She climbed a tree, an old hunter's trick, and clung to the trunk all night, watching shadows and glowing eyes below. By morning, the wolves were gone. She climbed down, legs barely holding her, but she kept going. Day 7, Yakutsk was 50 kilometers away. Her strength was gone. The dried meat was finished, just a few flatbreads left. Her feet were swollen, every step agony. The hallucinations returned. Katia, Nikolai, Maria Stepanovna walking beside her, talking. She answered out loud, then caught herself. If someone sees, they'll think I'm mad. Then came a miracle, as she'd later call it. A cart appeared on the road, driven by an old Yakut carrying firewood. He stopped, stared at her, then said in Russian, "Looking for Maria Ivanovna, third house from the post office. Say Semyon sent you." He drove off without looking back. How did he know? She never found out. Maybe Mikhail sent word, maybe there was a network helping runaways, or maybe he just saw a broken woman and took pity. The taiga has its own kind of mercy. Maria Ivanovna was a stout woman in her 60s with a kind face and quick movements. She opened the door, sized Varvara up, and pulled her inside without a word. "From Mikhail?" she asked. Varvara nodded. "All right, bath first, then we talk." The bath, hot water, soap was heaven. Varvara cried as she scrubbed off 2 months of filth, fear, and despair. Maria brought clean clothes, a simple dress, underwear, even shoes. "Should fit," she said. "You're not the first I've taken in." Over dinner, real borscht, potatoes, a piece of meat. Maria told her story. She was the widow of a Yakutsk police chief shot in 1937. She'd escaped arrest thanks to a tip and had been helping people like Varvara ever since. "You can't stay in Yakutsk," she said. "Everyone knows everyone here. A stranger stands out. Go to Irkutsk, my niece will take you in. From there, wherever you want, Moscow, Ukraine, you'll disappear." Varvara stayed 3 days, eating, sleeping, becoming human again. On the 4th, Maria handed her a steamship ticket. "You're my niece going to a family wedding. Checks are rare on the boat, but your papers are solid." The goodbye was heavy. Maria had become like family in 3 days. "Thank you," Varvara whispered. "Don't thank me," Maria said. "Thank those who got you here and thank yourself. Not everyone could do what you did." The steamship left in the morning. Varvara stood on the deck watching the shore fade. 2 months of hell were behind her, but true freedom was still far off. She needed a place where no one knew her, a job, a new life, and above all, to find Katia. Near Yakutsk, Maria's niece Nadia, a young teacher, welcomed her like family. She got Varvara a room in a textile factory dorm and a job as a cleaner, legal, with papers. Varvara became Anna Sergeyevna Petrova for good. She told no one her past, not even Nadia, but the past clung to her. Nightmares of the camp, the chase, she flinched at every police whistle. When the factory had a document check after a theft, she didn't sleep for 3 nights, ready to run. Then came news of Katia. Nadia, using her connections, learned Katia had been adopted by a military family in Sverdlovsk. She was alive, healthy, in school, but believed her parents were dead, killed in the war. Varvara got a report and didn't know what to do. Go to Sverdlovsk, take her daughter back, but what right did she have to shatter Katia's new life? The girl had a family, stability, a future. What could Varvara offer, a fugitive living under a false name? She wrote a letter, agonizing over every word. In the end, it was simple. "Katia, if you ever read this, know your mother loved you every second. I didn't abandon you, I just couldn't come back. Live happily, my girl, that's all I ask of God." She didn't send it, tucking it into her coat lining. Maybe one day, when times changed, when truth could be spoken, when Katia was grown and could understand. For now, Varvara lived as Anna Sergeyevna. She worked, rented a corner in a communal apartment, read books, sometimes went to the movies, losing herself in the dark for 2 hours. But stepping outside, she was a fugitive again, forever. People said Anna Sergeyevna was odd, quiet, unassuming, but with eyes that saw something others didn't, knew something others couldn't. Neighbors tried matchmaking her. Still a beautiful woman, hardworking, they'd say. She'd smile, say, "I was married once," and look into the distance. Spring 1953, Stalin's death. The country held its breath, waiting for change. Varvara, 4 years into her life as Anna Sergeyevna, stood in a crowd by a loudspeaker listening to the announcement. People wept around her. She didn't, she just thought, maybe now things will change, maybe I can take my name back. Amnesties started months later, first for criminals, then minor offenders. Political prisoners stayed locked up, but rumors swirled of case reviews, rehabilitations. Varvara waited, torn between hope and fear. What if they started hunting escapees? What if her breakout came to light? In 1956, after the 20th Party Congress, mass rehabilitations began. People returned from the camps worn, aged, but alive. Varvara met one such woman at a market. They recognized each other by their eyes, the eyes of those who'd seen hell. The woman whispered, "Var, is that you?" Varvara shook her head. "You're mistaken, I'm Anna." She walked away fast. But the past caught up in 1958. A young investigator from Moscow came to Irkutsk looking for witnesses in a case against Kolyma camp officials, including Captain Kramov. Varvara's escaped prisoner 456 Baranova VP came up in the files. The investigator found Anna Sergeyevna at the factory. "We need to talk," he said. Varvara's blood ran cold. After years of hiding, it was over. But he didn't arrest her. In an empty office, he shut the door and said, "I know who you are, Varvara Petrovna Baranova, escaped OLP-7 in March 1949, walked 2,000 kilometers, survived." She stayed silent, denying was pointless. "You don't understand," he continued. "I'm not here to arrest you, you're a victim of injustice, your case has been reviewed, you're fully rehabilitated. Rehabilitated, the word sounded alien. 14 years living under a false name in fear alone and now rehabilitated. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably for the first time in years. The investigator gave her papers, a rehabilitation certificate, restored rights, a pitiful compensation for 14 stolen years. You can take your name back, he said. Get your job back, housing, everything you're owed. She shook her head. Varvara Baranova died in that taiga. There was no bringing her back. What about my daughter? She asked. His face darkened. Ekaterina Pavlovna Morozova was a medical student in Sverdlovsk, married, expecting a child. She didn't know the truth. Her adoptive parents said her biological parents died in the war. Varvara made the hardest choice of her life, not to find Katia, not to upend her world. Let her live with her truth. It wasn't better or worse, just different. In the 1960s, Varvara, now Anna, moved to a small town near Novosibirsk. She became a librarian, work she loved, surrounded by books. She lived quietly, unnoticed. Neighbors knew her as kind, solitary, always helping with advice or a hand, especially with kids. She taught them to read, told them fairy tales. The children adored Aunt Anya. Only once did she tell her story to a young doctor in 1972 during a heart attack she thought would kill her. He listened, stunned. That's incredible, he said. No, she replied, it's just a life, one of millions. She lived another 15 years, dying quietly in her sleep in January 1987. A neighbor found her peaceful, clutching a faded photo of a 3-year-old girl in a white dress. Among her things was a notebook filled with her tiny handwriting, her memories from arrest to new life. The neighbor nearly threw it out, old lady's ramblings, who'd care, but something stopped her. She took it to a local museum where it sat in an archive for a decade. Varvara's story might have stayed buried if not for chance. In 1997, historians from the Memorial Society, digging through Magadan archives, found the file on prisoner 456's escape. It wasn't unique. Escapes happened, but a woman alone 2,000 kilometers in brutal cold. A note in the file read, not found, presumed dead. Yet another in different ink, rehabilitated posthumously 1956. The discrepancy caught their eye. If she died in 1949, why a personal rehabilitation? They traced her to Yakutsk. Anna Sergeyevna Petrova died 1987. The dates and age matched. The notebook in the museum pieced it together. They found Katia, now Ekaterina Pavlovna Morozova, 73, a respected doctor with children and grandchildren. When shown her mother's notebook, she sat in silence, then said, I always felt something was off about my parents' story. Too few details, too much unsaid. Now I know the truth. She gave the notebook to Memorial, but only for publication after her death. She passed in 2019, and only then did Varvara's story go public. It wasn't the only one. After it spread, others surfaced. Yakut villagers spoke of strangers stumbling out of the taiga, frostbitten, exhausted, but pushing forward. Some were helped, some betrayed. No one knows how many escapes succeeded. Those who made it stayed silent. Traces of their helpers emerged too. Mikhail's descendants confirmed he lived as a hermit, hiding documents for runaways. His stash was found and destroyed after his death in 1954, but the memory lived on. The Even community remembered too, their oral traditions telling of ice people, camp escapees they aided despite the deadly risk. Entire camps were wiped out by punitive squads for helping runaways, but the tradition endured. Varvara's story became a symbol of human will stronger than any system, of dignity and humanity preserved in impossible conditions, of freedom not given but taken. Today a small memorial stands at OLP7's site inscribed, to the memory of those who didn't return and those who found the strength to leave. People visit yearly, lay flowers, stand in silence and go. Old-timers say you can still find traces of those old trails in the taiga, paths desperate people walked in search of freedom. Most didn't make it. But some, like Varvara Baranova, proved the impossible was possible. How do we know this story? Documents are scattered, some in Magadan state archives, some with Memorial, some in family collections. Names were changed by descendants to protect secrets. The route was pieced together from indirect accounts and local stories. Many details can't be verified, time's too long, records destroyed, witnesses silent. But does it matter? Even if half the details were added later, the core remains. A woman defied a system and won at the cost of living under a false name for the rest of her days. This isn't just about escape, it's about the price of freedom. Sometimes, to stay human, you have to do the inhuman, walk 2,000 kilometers through icy hell, lose your name, your family, your past, and start over with nothing but a new name and a new fate. Varvara Baranova died as Anna Sergeyevna Petrova, but her story lives in archives, in memories, in the legends of taiga villages, and in the hearts of those who know freedom is worth any price, even if that price is a lifetime.